When you get a headache, sure, you can chop off your head, it's not very smart.
Someone who needs healing but has no idea that the person needs healing, what are the symptoms?
The hurt continues until the healing begins. I call it ABCDEs: avoiding, blaming, complaining, denying, and making excuses.
Wow, okay, my brain is still calibrated. Okay, you had to really give a true practical tip for especially men out there who are really facing some tough times in their life and are not open to going out but still want to start something. You just made me think like 3 E's: entertain, empathize, and engage.
Every time I mention list 3 role models, nobody mentions themselves.
Oh yeah, of course. Okay.
Which is when you get a headache, sure, you can chop off your head, it's not very smart.
Someone who needs healing but has no idea that the person needs healing, what are the symptoms?
The hurt continues until the healing begins. I call it ABCDEs: avoiding, blaming, complaining, denying, and making excuses.
Wow, okay, my brain is still calibrated. Okay, you had to really give a true practical tip for especially men out there who are really facing some tough times in their life and are not open to going out but still want to start something. You just made me think like 3 E's: entertain, empathize, and engage.
Every time I mention list 3 role models, nobody mentions themselves.
Oh yeah, of course. Okay.
Which is
Stuart, someone who needs healing but has no idea that the person needs healing, what are the symptoms?
Symptoms of healing or need for healing begin with an unrecognized set of emotions. A lot of the time it comes through your self-talk. And once you recognize the self-talk causes you to hit a barrier, you know you need healing. So the barriers will come from being limited, being deficit in your mind, in your responses, being negative towards other people. I call it ABCDEs: avoiding, blaming, complaining, denying, and making excuses.
Wow, okay, my brain is still calibrated. Okay, and the first step of healing, if someone wants to do at their home or at their workplace, what should they do?
Holding the space for limitations is extremely important. So what I mean by holding the space is really sitting down with that limitation, sitting down with that negativity, sitting down with the fear or anxiety or anything that's preventing you from moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like there is a boulder in front of you. If you try to drive into it, you'll get more damage. So you sit down, you investigate it, you listen to it, you talk to it. And through that process, you get to understand the part of you that you actually wanted to get rid of first. Right? It's not something alien, it's actually already within you. So a lot of people try to get rid of negative things, they try to remove those things, but when you get a headache, sure, you can chop off your head, it's not very smart, right? And therefore, we need to say, look, this is a part of me, the negative belief is a part of me. Even if I had to say goodbye, I won't let it go so easily. I need to know that it's no longer functional in my life, and then I can let it go. So that's the first step.
Even the divorce, the peaceful it is, the better the life is. Okay, makes sense. And I really have to understand if there are people who needs healing, don't know they need healing, neither they want to really get healed, and they are at a stage of life where they don't even understand the value of healing, right? And if you are put in that space where you are facing 20 people to really let them be inspired to unleash their potential, how would you do that?
I think the problem with most people is that they think that healing is a very fuddy-duddy thing, it's like a very soft thing. Well, the hurt continues until the healing begins. that's the nature of life. As long as things don't go well in your life, as long as you're complaining, as long as there are barriers to whatever it is that you're experiencing, even though you set goals, even though you strive hard and you're struggling, right? The moment you encounter that, it always means that there's a healing process that needs to take place. It's about looking inside oneself. So if there's a group of 20 people or in front of me, the first step is to get them to start thinking about their story of life. What's your history? And the moment people start sharing that, they begin to hold the space for that negative emotion that I talked about earlier on. And once that happens, that ventilation makes people realize we are the same. It's normal to go through such an experience, and there's more beyond it. This is just a small little black dot in the entire canvas of my life. So if I want to look beyond it, I have to start looking at all the white that's there.
Interesting. And okay, so men has that reputation that they can't cry because they're men, and there's like, okay, I am the the strong one and stuff. And I have this, maybe it's a belief, but I always feel that they might have more harder time healing because probably crying is not part of the process for them or anything. So if you had to really give a true practical tip for especially men out there who are really facing some tough times in their life and are not open to going out but still want to start something.
So this is a bit of a question of how individuals understand the feminine versus the masculine energy within them. So when you're imbalanced in either way, whether you're too feminine or too masculine in your character, I'm not talking about behaviors, right? I'm thinking, when has imbalance ever helped a human being? And the answer is never. So the balancing of masculinity is no longer just about denying the masculinity, it's about embracing it, and in a sense, it's not taking two halves and putting it together. It's about both and more. It's a synergistic paradigm. When an individual says, oh, this person is too masculine, or he's too aggressive, and he's too egotistical, it's because you have overplayed the masculinity at the expense of the feminine soft energy. So to be able to balance it up means, do I even respect feminine energy? Because if I don't, I'm going to have a really tough time in my life because the remaining 50% of the population is feminine, right? So in order for someone with a big ego to experience the need for healing, or to go to the other side and to experience what it's like to have that softer energy, it always starts off with, do I have a certain respect for what that energy can do? And have I been able to apply it to myself, or has anybody attempted to apply it to me, where I feel whole rather than half a whole?
Oh, wow, that's very beautiful. And Stuart, of course, someone who has been working with teams and MNCs and companies out there to really work on day-to-day life of those people who feels like they're somewhere at a fix. I would love for you to share with me how exactly do you make a difference in their journey as a coach, as a mentor?
Sure. In the context of speaking, one of the problems with delivering a speech, so to speak, is that is an introduction, right? That's the door opening. That's 10% of the learning experience. Unfortunately, a lot of people have this mistaken impression that it's the 100%. And that's also the reason why you can go into a seminar, whether it's with Tony Robbins or whomever, right? And you walk out feeling like you're on cloud 9, and then you crash back into hell 3 days later. It's only because of this misnomer. 10% needs to be transferred into your real life. So how are you actually going to apply it, and how are you going to have a support group that says, hey, let's talk to one another, let's share information, and let's progress by building projects that actually returns. Now, the projects aren't going to be pretty, you're going to fail, but that's the point. Your knowledge to actually rolling out a project takes time. So that's known as the 10-20-70 rule. 10% in your formal learning, 20% in your informal social type learning, and then the remaining 70% in actual real life action.
Yeah. Implementation.
So the individuals within teams who are feeling fractured, maybe even they need healing as a culture, as a group, the way to elevate them is not to give them more things to do, but to help them see what they have to do with different eyes.
Right.
The perspectives that they have now have been clouded because of a lack of information, but the truth is that all teams, regardless of where you go, you're in an MNC or a small medium business, you're basically doing the same thing. It's just the way you frame the experience is different, and therefore you don't have the chance to hear from a different perspective what this work really means to me, to you, to my boss, to my colleagues, because conversation has died. And when conversation dies, all sorts of cancer begin to take place. It's the same thing with any kind of relationship. It's the same thing if you stop communicating within yourself. It happens with organizations as well. So if there's that kind of culture, first entertain, right? First entertain. If they can't even get a good laugh, then they won't pay attention. And then show them that you've understood or empathized with their experience, right? So entertain, empathize, and then enable. Allow these people to play in the training or in the event so that it's experienced rather than just a theory. I mean, with podcasts, it's a little bit different because people get the idea. Sometimes it just gets lost, right? But again, if we can do those three things, we're very, very likely to be able to uplift people so that they at least feel inspired to want to do something different.
You just made me think like 3 E's: entertain, empathize, and engage. Means like experiential engagement.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the last thing. When we are really listing all these traumas and self-limiting beliefs, it's very, when you're getting into that phase, it's like, how stupid is this? I mean, can this really be a limiting belief? Now that with 30 years of experience, I was about to say 30 decade, and it was like, okay, the math would have been wrong in terms of So with 30 years of experience, I would love for you to highlight some of the most stupid, obvious, common, self-limiting trauma beliefs that people have, with an objective that if someone has that thought, they can understand that it is a limiting belief and it is not a truth. It's not the reality of their life.
Yeah, well, here's the trouble with attempting to think about trauma in that way. Trauma is a very lived experience,
Right.
and it's a very isolated experience. So if you suddenly have a phobia of lizards, there has been some form of a trauma that took place, but you may not be able to place it. Now, no matter how silly or odd that looks, it's like you're a landlord and there's a squatter renting a house without paying, right? So there's a lot of mind space being occupied that could have been used to, for something even better. And unfortunately, most people don't recognize this. They don't evict that tenant because it's not reaping any returns. So from that standpoint, maybe you could say that it is silly. I hesitate to use that because, again, when it comes back to the emotional needs of the individual, I have to recognize that if the first thing that I think of as a therapist, as a coach or counselor, is that whatever behavior you have is stupid, then it's unfortunate.
I'm absolutely, but we think it as stupid because when we go through, it's like, and why are you reading my mind about lizard? I don't know. Just yesterday I had this realization that why I am very, very, very scared of lizard. But yes, it came from an incident from my childhood, and that's why I'm fucking scared of lizard.
So, well, yes. And kudos to you recognizing you have the fear, and then having some sense of self-compassion that it is normal, and I would like to deal with it. It's scary, just like anyone might be afraid of heights or afraid of approaching an authority figure, and maybe even running a business. Some of them may have fears of that. Now, beyond that, as individuals, if I, as a therapist, cannot hold the space for the other person, they cannot role model that.
Right.
And then they cannot hold the space for themselves. And when they're able to hold the space for themselves, they'll realize that I just need some self-compassion. I need to be able to look at myself as a whole, complete, resourceful individual that for that temporary moment forgot that I've got all these resources available to me, right? So I am mindful that individuals who sometimes are a little bit hard on themselves, harsh on themselves, there's a need for them to go back and think about the variations of them that actually overcame things, surpassed limitations. A lot of the time I ask people to list down, like Khush right now, list me your top 3 role models. Who are they?
Okay, I would put across as Michelle Obama, Priyanka Chopra, she comes to my head, and I think my dad.
Fantastic, right? Absolute role model, because every time I mention list 3 role models, nobody mentions themselves.
Oh yeah, of course. Okay.
Which is true.
Yeah.
We don't think of ourselves that highly, which on one hand says you're a humble individual. On the other hand, also means that we have not come in to recognize our power. My role model has to be myself, because I have more shared moments with myself than anybody in the world. I mean, I don't know about you, maybe you live with Michelle Obama, right? But that's a different story altogether. And
Yet to. I'm getting there.
So for us to be able to recognize that we have the ultimate power, we are the ultimate power for our ultimate life, then we will stop disrespecting ourselves so much, and we'll start putting ourselves maybe not on an egotistical pedestal, but a loving one that enables us to say, yeah, this is tough, I'm going to get through this, and I know, even though I don't know exactly how, I have the resources to be able to get me there.
Wow, wonderful. I mean, you really got me thinking. As we are wrapping it up, one final thought that you would leave us with.
So many things. I would say that we have to remember that we are a living form of energy. That wherever we go, we leave our imprint there. So we have to always leave the place that we were in a better place than when it was passed to us. Whether it's a table, it's an office, it's a mall, did we leave that place better? Because we leave parts of us there. And as we continue to be mindful of that, it's likely that we can create better energy and allow that energy to impact others, even though it's just a passing vibration. And yeah, I think it'll be a better world.
Very nice. Okay. So that means you really, I started visualizing that you really emit purity, the peace and happiness and joy everywhere you go, and you leave behind those beautiful little petals. So
because the alternative is unthinkable. I mean, you can. I mean, imagine you're just carrying trash and leaving trash all over. It's funny, right? I mean, when you think about it that way, why would you want to do that? You're just making things miserable. Right?
Yeah, and dirty.
Yeah.
And this.
It doesn't mean that we don't have trash. We do have trash.
Exactly,
right?
And that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to say, that with this funny anecdote that we had put together, we actually leave trash. There are so many wounded relationships. There are so many wounded bonds, or even if it's a client or it's a family or it's distance family and stuff. And this is what we say, we don't leave the right energy, right? And that's what is trash in energy terms, right?
Yeah. So we clean up our trash, make sure we go dump, do our recycling and so on. And to a great extent, once we've cleared ourselves of that, evicted all the squatters, the dirt begins to get less, it becomes less of an obstacle on our way towards success and meaning and purpose. And that's where people can then follow. We were born pure, we accumulated trash along the way, we forgot to release the baggage. Yeah.
Wow. I need a high five on that. This is amazing. Thank you so much for being with us, Stuart. It was lovely.
Thank you.